A gentle breeze rustled the trees behind the school and rolled across the field. It had been one of Dawn's favorite sounds in her childhood, that gentle whooshing sound that started softly and grew until it seemed like every tree for 10 miles was caught up in it. She imagined she could hear the creaking of the chains on the swing set as they swayed along with it. The breeze was cold, surprisingly so given the time of year. Dawn let the cool air wash over her as she drank in that sound. For a moment, her worry over the property, her grief over her mother, all of it seemed to melt away. Then the breeze turned. Its soft caress grew violent, angry. Dawn's hair whipped about, her clothes strained against her body. The mellow rush grew louder, its pitch deepened. It slowly twisted into a mournful cry, howling its rage and agony across the entire valley. Dawn's eyes snapped open, and the voice ceased, its dying echo quickly fading into the distance. She was cold, not a chill from the breeze, but a deep, sharp cold that penetrated her to the marrow, just like the night her sister disappeared, just like the day her father died, just like the night before her mother. No, she thought. Come on, snap out of it. Just go. Just get in the car and go. Why aren't you moving? Dawn hurried to the car amidst an inexplicable sense of urgency. She didn't know where it came from, but she knew she had to move. The engine roared to life and Dawn hit the gas, spinning her tires in the gravel and broken concrete before jerking the car onto the road. Only when she was some distance away from the school did she slow down. She grabbed her seatbelt, fastened it, and chided herself for being so irresponsible. The GPS rang out to make a left on Kelly Road. Dawn shrieked at the voice and lost her breath for a moment. As her heart rate leveled out, her cheeks burned red with embarrassment. You don't have to shout, she said. Unsurprisingly, the GPS did not reply. As with Ingle Road before it, Kelly Road looked vastly different. New houses popped up, some older homes had changed. Fresh paint, new siding, landscaping, dozens of little things she could sense but couldn't pinpoint. Soon enough, the houses grew farther apart, until eventually they were replaced by a thick forest. The tree line pressed right up against the road, and it even begun to overgrow the guardrail. The open, spacious land and properties were all but gone now. Dawn shifted in her seat as the trees seemed to close in. She could have sworn they were trying to reach out and suffocate her. The forest was ancient, and its trees rough and thick, with large trunks that seemed to push each other out of the way. They bore twisted branches that grew hopelessly entangled higher up and seemed to reach toward her closer to the forest floor. Dawn ignored the shiver that tickled her spine. It was a ridiculous thought, of course. The trees weren't reaching for her. The tangle of thick branches and the proximity of the larger trees to each other made it difficult for anything near the floor to get any direct sunlight. Naturally, those leaves would perish sooner, leaving the branches barren and twisted downward. It also gave the entire forest the look of a desolate boneyard, as if skeletal arms were bursting out of the ground and struggling to rise from there. Stop, she thought. Just stop. Something appeared in the middle of the road just ahead of her. A buck, its antlered head staring at her. Dawn jerked the wheel to the left and slammed on the brakes. She lost sight of the deer as the car began to spin, the back tires screeching in protest as they slid across the pavement. Her stomach lurched into her throat, and she felt oddly weightless. There was a sickening, spine-rattling thud, the sort of noise that could only be the sound of a living creature bouncing off of a heavy object at high speed. Then, nothing. The car was at rest. Shit, Dawn said through clenched teeth. Her fingers released their death grip on the steering wheel. The jackhammer in her chest relented. Her shallow breaths became deeper. Finally, she was able to fumble for the handle and throw the door open. Her right leg gave out as she tried to stand. Once steadied, she took small steps around to the passenger side to assess the damage. Where had the damn thing come from? How had she not seen it sooner? Or perhaps, More urgently, why couldn't she see it now? As she rounded the passenger side, Dawn expected to see the injured, possibly dead deer. She had felt the impact to her core, to the roots of her teeth. There was no question in her mind that she had hit it. Yet the road was empty. There was no deer to be found, wounded or otherwise. It must have run off somehow, Dawn thought. Even as the words came to mind, she knew there was no truth in them. The deer had impacted on her passenger side, between the front and rear doors, yet there was no damage. No indentation, no spots of blood or tufts of fur, not so much as a scuff mark. Any relief Dawn felt at her car being undamaged fled quickly in the face of a darker realization. What the hell had just happened? Surely she hadn't imagined the entire thing, had she? Was she really so exhausted, so stressed out that she was hallucinating? That's how it started with Mom. The thought was a dagger in her chest, and she treated it as such. She ripped it away from her and put it behind her. She was not going down that path. No, there was another explanation. There had to be. She returned to the still open door. The hair on her neck and arms suddenly rose, and she felt another presence on the road with her. And she was positive it was going to grab her if she didn't get in the car right now. She hurried inside and slammed the door. As she reached for the seatbelt, she found herself staring into the black eyes of the buck. The beast was right outside her window, so close that its breath blew ragged patterns of fog across the glass. Dawn screamed and leaned away as the deer shook its head threateningly. The antlers scraped across the window. Dawn winced. She slowly reached for the steering wheel. The buck snorted, reared back, hit the window with its antlers. Dawn screamed again. She grabbed the wheel, threw the car in gear, and floored it. The buck's head bounced off the window as the car sped away. In the rear view, Dawn couldn't believe what she saw. The damn thing was chasing after her.